want to start it up?
Welcome to Ensigns of the Nations. Let's get started.
Let's rock and roll. Let's get this party going on Ensign Drive.
As you know, we live on Ensign Drive right across the street from the Saratoga Springs Temple. We love walking around the temple, and on Sundays we walk around and we discuss the Come Follow Me lesson. And so this week, the Come Follow Me lesson that we're talking about is sections, what is it now?
46 through 49.
46 through 49, right. So we know that in church history, they're in Kirtland. They're starting to establish that community right there. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about what all that is. We're glad to have Jonah and Maya there.
Hi.
Hi, Maya. Today the weather is not too bad. It's not too windy.
Finally, the last 3 weeks the wind has been crazy, insane. So for today, the temperature, weather, everything is beautiful. We're going to go on a walk around the temple block, and on each street we talk about something different with Come Follow Me. So thanks for joining us on our walk today.
So as we approach the first corner, which is the corner of Ensign and Herald, let's talk about the background for Doctrine and Covenants section 46. 46, like I said, we have people who are in Kirtland, strengthening the community, strengthening the church. They have come from different backgrounds and lots of different places. It's still a fairly small people. They don't have church handbooks or anything like that. They don't even have a whole lot of copies of the Book of Mormon.
And I think that's important to talking about their background and the different backgrounds. There's Quakers, Methodists,
right,
all kinds of different ways that they worship, all coming together and trying to figure out how do we worship now.
Yeah. There was some weird stuff going on in different places. I read a story that Levi Hancock, who was an early member of the church, he was in Kirtland in 1831 in January, and he's talked about how there was 3 guys who came up to him and introduced themselves as elders of the church, and during the church meetings they would do all kinds of weird stuff. He said one of them would jump up as high as he possibly could and bang his head against the ceiling and then fall down like he was unconscious, and then get up later and talk about all the visions that he had while he was unconscious. Somebody else was acting like a baboon, jumping all around the whole place, and so he just felt like these are interesting, and these young men thought that they were presenting the spirit that they felt, and hey there, and they but he was worried that why didn't he get those kind of spiritual manifestations? He has gotten some, he said. He's gotten lots of different things, but they never felt like they were that special or that strange. So this is the environment that was happening when Joseph Smith received this in this Doctrine and Covenants section 46. It's kind of to help those people understand what's the way it's supposed to be, and the Lord's setting them straight. So a big part of section 46 is gifts of the Spirit. So what do you guys think gifts of the Spirit are?
I think they're like things that God gives us so we can grow our spirituality, and like they're things that we can do or things that we experience that grow our testimonies.
Good. What kind of things are gifts of the Spirit?
Well, there's an infinite amount of gifts of the Spirit, but some of them might be the gift to feel the Spirit a lot, or the gift of tongues,
right,
or the gift of being able to healing.
I love what you said. I never thought about that, the infinite number. And the reason I like that, when you said that, I thought that's true, because I think gifts of the Spirit are just that. They're gifts that help us in our own wards, in our own communities, in our own families. So they're going to be gifts from our Heavenly Father that help profit those around us in their circumstances. So in that sense, I do think it could be a lot of different things that can help spiritually build up those that we're associating with in our wards and in our families.
Right. In the scriptures, in different places, not just in this Doctrine and Covenants section, there's a lot of different things that they talk about with what gifts of the Spirit are. In section 46, these are some of the things they talk about, and some of them are interesting. They said a gift of the Spirit is to know that Jesus is the Christ. That's a gift of the Spirit. So that's a testimony thing, Maya, like what you were talking about. And then right after that, it says that there's a gift of the Spirit to believe those people who know. So not everybody gets the gift of the Spirit to know that Jesus is the Christ, but some people get the gift of the Spirit to believe that they are.
And here's why I like that one. In my family, there is a lot of musical talent. You guys know that when the Micah family gets together, there are people playing instruments, violin, piano, like professional singers. I do not have those gifts. But I do believe I have a gift of being a really great audience member. I know that sounds really silly, but honestly, what good is it to have all of those performers if you have nobody sitting there and absorbing it and loving it?
Right.
And I am blessed to be able to enjoy it. And that is a gift I've come to realize.
Yeah.
As sad as I've been my whole life to not be talented.
Now, she is musical. I absolutely love to hear her play the piano, and she does a good job at everything she tries.
Well, ask the people who have been in primary when I've been the primary pianist. They might not agree with you, but thank you.
There's also a gift of administration. That's one I thought was interesting, because certainly there's some people who are good at being a leader. There's gift of wisdom, gift of knowledge. There's a gift of the faith to be healed, and a gift of the faith to heal. So, like Jonah was talking about, those are really important ones. Most important, I think, that we get out of this is that the reason for these gifts are to benefit the people of God, the children of God, it says, and it's really only because. It should not be a sign. That's the one thing that I thought was important here. These gifts of the Spirit.
All right, he's going to keep going on my street if I don't jump in here. We are now moving on to candlelight. This is where I give a message, a candlelight moment, we call it. So I want to talk today about something that has to do with Doctrine and Covenants 47, which is keeping records. And we are told to keep a record of what we do, our spiritual experiences, our lives. And I was doing some family history this week, entering some information into Family Search about my Uncle Bud. Uncle Bud is married to Aunt Connie, who was my mother's sister. And there was no record in there yet, so I was sort of starting this brand new, entering everything. And what I remember about Uncle Bud is what a great swimmer he was. Every 4th of July, we lived in a little community in mid-Michigan, small town called Fenton, where we had turtle races. And anybody who wanted to enter got a sticker on the turtle's back, and all the turtles were put in a circle, and they would lift up the barrel or whatever was covering the turtles. And then whichever turtle made it to the outside circle first would win. But anyway, Uncle Bud, every 4th of July, would swim in that lake, Runyon Lake, and catch a turtle for each of the kids so we could enter this contest. And I was so impressed with my Uncle Bud. He could swim so well. He would dive in the water with his mask on, and he would catch turtles while swimming. And to me, that just blew my mind. But he was an excellent swimmer, and I wanted to enter that memory that I had of him. I remember him coming up out of the water, soaking wet, big smile on his face, with turtles that he would bring to us and let us enter. But I called my mom and I said, hey, tell me a little bit something more about Uncle Bud. And she told me the coolest background on him. He was what was called a frogman in World War II.
In the Navy.
In the Navy. And they would dive underwater. Well, first of all, they wanted him to teach swimming lessons to the other Navy soldiers, and he said no, he didn't want to teach, he wanted to be in the active parts of the Navy. So he became a frogman. Their job was to swim underwater and detonate enemy warcrafts. So he was very much into the active components of this, and I was so impressed to learn that about him. But also, there was an incident where his ship got bombed, and he was actually saving lives of his fellow soldiers who couldn't swim very well, and he would have one or two of these soldiers on his back, and he would help them to shore, and then he'd swim back out and get some more. Well, at one point he had 2 different men that he was trying to help to shore, and a buddy of his had called, Bud, help! He was in the water and needed some assistance. And Uncle Bud had to make a decision. Am I going to, abandon these 2 that he was already helping, or am I going to go back and help my buddy? And he brought the 2 that he was already helping to shore. And when he came back to try to help his buddy, he could not find him. So he felt very responsible, guilty about this his whole life, but I never knew that. I remember him being positive attitude, smile on his face always. Is that not the first thing you think of with Uncle Bud?
It's just such a cream of the crop.
In fact, on his deathbed, my mother asked him, what lesson do you want us to remember? What can we learn from you? And he said to always look for the positive and you'll find it. So to me, that is the spirit of Elijah. It is the great blessing of keeping records. That story wasn't just for him or for me. It's for you, Maya. It's for you, Jonah. It's for your kids and grandkids to learn about Uncle Bud and to learn that message that he had.
That's the value and the importance of keeping records, which is basically what 47's about. David Whitmer was asked to be the church historian, and the reason for those great records is just exactly what Allison's talking about, so that we can know what's happening. Okay, we turned on to Lighthouse now, and we talk about what our latter-day prophets and apostles and leaders have taught us about this subject. So I think, Jonah, you were going to talk a little bit about this lesson.
Well, we just read a talk by the 70 in 2019.
Yeah.
And that was about spiritual gifts.
Elder Villar.
It was about exercising your spiritual muscles, he called it.
Right.
How it's similar to your physical muscles, but because the more you exercise them, the bigger they'll grow, and that's the same thing for your faith and your testimony. And he used the example of when he was a teenager, his brother was on a mission, and he went and visited a bunch of homes with his brother. This was even before he was baptized.
Right.
So it was a big spiritual boost for him, and that was an example he used of exercising your spiritual muscles so that your testimony can grow, and that's a gift of the Spirit.
Right. Testimony is a gift of the Spirit. Maya, did you have a little something?
Yeah, so in seminary right now, we're kind of talking about like exercising your spiritual muscles or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were kind of like talking about how even the little things can help you grow muscle, like going to church every Sunday. But then like I gave a comment in seminary, and I was like, I like to go to the temple as much as I possibly can. So then that's like, it's like lifting a big weight. So then you like, it's harder, and the bigger weight you lift, like the bigger your muscles will grow. I think that's kind of like the the stronger you the more you lift, the stronger spiritually you get.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, Elder Villar's talk that Jonah just talked about, that's what he was saying, is that you can't just ask for a gift of the Spirit, which is something that is in that section. It says, seek ye for the best gifts of the Spirit. Seek them, ask for them. But you have to have faith that the Lord would give it to you. You know, he talked about if you seek a gift of the Spirit like patience, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have things that you're going to need to develop patience for, and that means you exercise and actually do stuff. What else?
And those gifts can change over time. According to where you are. I think I look back on some of the things that I did when I was a primary president or even as a younger mom, and some of the talents maybe that I had with, I used to cook more, I used to make these posters for primary, things that I honestly have sort of fizzled out on, but I've changed and grown in different ways. And I think those spiritual gifts can change, can grow, can become different as we move on.
Yeah, depending upon what season in our life we're in.
I think that's true for the saints in general. Because I think there's been a lot of spiritual gifts that were much more common in other times in the scriptures or in history.
Right, absolutely.
Like the gift of tongues used to be, I think it was more prevalent that it was like to everybody else they couldn't understand it. It was some kind of made up or new language. But to the person speaking it, then that's what it was. And then there was also the interpretation of tongues so that that person could understand what they were saying. But in I think in today's age, it's a lot more that there's current languages like Spanish or something like that you might learn on your mission. And when you have the gift of tongues, you can speak that language and you can learn it much quicker than you would be able to just with your worldly knowledge.
I've heard and read about so many stories about missionaries who'd gone out and maybe even struggled with the language for a long time, and then all of a sudden, after long prayers and pondering, they spoke it, just as good as anybody else. And that's definitely the modern day showing of the gift of tongues that we have. I remember when I went on my mission, I just spoke English, so I didn't have the gift of tongues. But in the MTC, in a sacrament meeting, I was asked to give a talk about the gift of tongues. And so I started off, and I don't even know why I did this. It was so dumb, because people probably thought I was very, very strange. But I started off by, I got up there and I went, and everybody was looking at me like, what? Especially the bishop. And he said, and then I said, and what that means is, I'm going to talk about the gift of tongues, or something like that. Because Jonah's right, somebody doesn't speak tongues unless somebody's around to have the interpretation of tongues. So that's what I was trying to talk about. But that was pretty goofy. And it's not really what the gift of tongues is about nowadays. The gift of tongues really is about missionaries communicating with people who need the gospel.
Yeah. But there were times where it was more prevalent that they used that, because like Brigham Young just would sometimes do that.
Right. I mean, there certainly is something called the Adamic language, and that's what they think that sometimes that people who are speaking with tongues say, talking about.
Yeah.
But any gift, like we said before, is for the benefit and the upliftment of the people around. So, well, what else? Any other ideas and thoughts on how this week's lesson has pertained in your life?
I will just add, we talked a lot about spiritual gifts this week, and in our own family, I see so many different gifts. And everybody comments when they see our kids that, oh, you guys don't even look like you're from the same family. We have blonde and brown hair, brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. But also in personality, I feel like everybody in our family has a little bit of a different personality. But I love that. It's how we all work together. It's how we benefit each other. We profit one another by those gifts. And they have spiritual gifts too that are different from each other.
For sure.
They really do. Every single one of our kids has great spiritual gifts, but they're different. And I'm grateful for that as a family, that we can benefit from one another.
Well, and that's what the scripture says, is that everybody has been blessed with gifts. That's why we're supposed to think about it. Maya, come here.
Maya, we can't lose you.
So we've made it all the way around the temple now. And here we are in front of the temple. We're glad to see the flowers starting to bloom around everywhere. We love being here. We love being together as a family. And we loved doing this today. So we'll see you next time on
And Science to the Nations. Have a great week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Is there something afterward?
Huh?
Oh my gosh.